So it's like anything. All the most fun moments are improvised on that show.
Right.
But you do loads of prep in case no fun moments happen.
Yeah.
And sometimes there would be a really hard audience, and it would be like, all right,
Would
we're
there
not having
really?
any
Yeah.
fun. Every now and then it would be like we're all looking at each other like, F you. There were times when Dara had to be like, right, what the fuck is wrong with everyone?
Obviously, you're a panel show regular now on lots of things. Mock the Week being one of them. Do you prefer stand up or do you prefer panel shows? What?
I just think they just feel like completely different things. So
Right.
I like doing those shows. They're all really. The thing is, it's sort of almost weird to say panel shows as like a blanket because they all are so different to each other.
Right.
Mock the Week didn't feel like doing anything else I've done. QI is like doing a really fun podcast, and Mock the Week is like being in the army. It's like intense. And
In what way? Like the amount of prep you have to do? Or?
Lots of prep. 6 people, arguably 7 people, are trying to come up with original angles on the same things. So obviously the news is Brexit has happened, and now 6 people need to pile in. And so the reason you do lots of prep for Mock the Week and come up with loads of angles isn't because you're trying to say loads of stuff. It's because your stuff just disappears because someone else has said it first. You know what I mean? It's like, I've got a joke about that. And then someone says it, and it's like...
So do the other comics on the show, do they know what you're going to be saying?
No.
They don't.
So no one knows what each other's going to be saying. So you just go... It's like anything. If you're going to go on a topical show and you know what the news is, it would be mad not to give some thought to those news things and come up with some jokes about it.
Oh, so it's not like you're given the questions. It's you just know an idea of what's going to be spoken about.
Yeah. They send you some articles saying we're going to talk. So it will be obvious anyway.
Yeah.
But the day before, they would go, the main story is going to be this one. But they wouldn't say he's going to ask you this and this and this. Because it doesn't really work like that Mock the Week. It's just sort of like a back and forth anyway, isn't it? A conversation.
Yeah.
And details emerge about the story through that because you'll go like, I read that article and then that thing that someone said, I've got a joke about that. So then it's like, that's more of the story comes out like that. My approach as it went on was to go, actually, it's easier to bird's eye view it. The less information you have to get across in a joke, the better.
Right.
So if you can just talk about, when we were doing like cost of living crisis and stuff, there was loads of specifics about inflation numbers and all this sort of stuff and lots of explaining to do before you could get to a punchline. And I was like, the headline news is no one has any money.
Yeah.
So I'll just come up with some ways to save money that people won't have thought of. Like, you'd never need to buy a coat. You just need to buy a raffle book and then go into a nightclub cloakroom and then you just get a free coat. You don't need to pay for Wi-Fi. You just need to take your laptop to a tube platform and work there all day. Just like things like that. It was like, if you just come up with things like that's still topical because it's about how no one has any money, but it's not going, so inflation's risen by 4.5%. And what that means, and then you just go, fuck all of that. I can't be asked.
How hard is it to sit there and the other, like, have the other comedians tackle stuff you've already got written down thinking...
Well, as it went on, it got to a point where I was like, my angles, the most interesting things I wanted to say were the sorts of things I would say that other people wouldn't, because I established on that show specifically, I'd managed to sort of establish an angle and a voice. And my angle often was I would try and fix the problem, which other people would, like, generally that show is talk about the problem, and I would just try and come up with a, why don't we just do this type, a twisted logic solution to it. And no one else was doing that at the top when I was on. So I never felt stepped on in that way. It's more in the rounds, the end round, scenes we'd like to see. The one of like, unlikely film trailers or whatever.
Yeah.
Sometimes it isn't even they do the exact same joke. It's like...
Too similar.
It's just it's bringing up something that it would only really be funny if the topic was a surprise, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
like,
right.
It's about the same film and then you're like, well, I can't do that one now. I've got to wait for at least 10 jokes and then the moment's gone and that sort of stuff.
Because you obviously get sent them before, don't you? So you can write them. How many would you say you have to write for one scene?
Everyone approached it differently. So you actually do 3 and they just pick the best 2.
Oh, okay.
On the night. And then often what would happen is they would repeat the one that didn't make it the next week. And so you just go, well, those all worked, so I'll just do that. Or they'd go, those were shit, can you write some new ones? And actually some of them, like, I'd say it got to, the more comfortable you got on the show, the more you would improvise in that round. Because someone would say something that would make you think of something. So yes, you would write jokes in advance for that, but you would also, I would improvise like half. Because it was, and then, I don't know what percentage would make the edit, but you would also improvise loads. And anything that's a callback to something that's happened in the show is obviously improvised. So it's like anything, all the most fun moments are improvised on that show.
Right.
But you do loads of prep in case no fun moments happen.
Yeah.
And sometimes there would be a really hard audience and it would be like, all right.
Would they really? Yeah.
Every now and then it would be like, we're all looking at each other like, fuck you. And the worst part about that is the harder the audience, the longer you have to do, because they're the directors in the gallery going, we've got fucking nothing here.
Right.
So keep talking about it until we get something and break
shit.
through. There were times when Dara had to be like, right, what the fuck is wrong with everyone? And it would always like make them all right.
Yeah.
He would just be like, oh, sorry, let's not. And also there's times when the news is really fucking heavy. And so the audience are like going, what do we do? Can we laugh at this?
Yeah.
And they're like nervous about how they're going to approach these topics.
Do you know how they? Did you go to a panel? You were.
Yeah, I went to 8 out of 10 Cats Does Countdown.
How do they pick the audiences for shows like that then?
It's just like a ballot thing.
Oh, is it?
Oh yeah, and it's just like
You can just go.
Who queues up for fucking ages and then comes in.
It's free. It was like because I think I went and saw Chatty Man.
Okay.
And none of the guests were there because they just happened to be. It was meant to be like Bradley Cooper, Justin Bieber, and Noel Fielding. So I was like, this is cool.
Wow.
And I got there, and then just Noel Fielding was there, and I was like, I like him.
Yeah.
Wait,
But I was expecting Bieber and Cooper. They were both there in England already, so they pre-filmed it and made out like it was in a different app. And because of that, they were then like, John, like front row to another show or something. I was like, yeah, all right. So yeah, I went and saw that.
Oh wow.
So did you just go to a recording there and it was just one interview?
Yeah, it was really
It must have
short.
been about 10 minutes.
Yeah, I don't even live in London, so it's great.
Is it really that short?
It was short.
Couldn't they just do the interview with Noel and then just do canned laughter over it and cut to the crowd rather than? Or is that unfair on him? That's probably
Yeah, I mean, it is. It is hard. It is hard to the atmosphere. You'd just be able to tell.
You're right.
They would just be flat.
Yeah.
And
Right.
They could have brought him on a different episode if they. But I guess
Just
it's
getting
time.
him in for that one thing is crazy. Yeah.
Do you feel really? Do comedians feel really competitive when they're on a show like that? Like, is it a bit of a?
I don't think so. Mock the Week had this reputation before I did it, long before I did it, of being this bear pit, and everyone would write articles or in interviews would say, "Oh God, it's horrible. You can't get a word in," and all that sort of stuff. By the time I did it, everyone on it was just sort of like my mate. So it was, and everyone was so nice. So like, you hear all these stories. And I did it. The first time I did it was the one of the Brexit result that was also the day after England got knocked out to Iceland and Roy Hodgson stepped down.
Wow.
So it was like it was a big one.
Yeah.
And I remember just like kind of prepping for it the day before, being a bit like rabbit in the headlights about it, being like, fucking hell. But also feeling like my style of comedy suits this show. So I should be okay.
Mm-hmm.
I've just got to try and do what I can do on here. And obviously I was nervous doing it, like thinking, okay, well, these guys are so relaxed.
Did you say this was your first one?
That was the first one.
Oh, okay.
But before it, Rob Beckett was on it. He phoned me and the day before and said, it's going to be fine. Here's how it works. Don't overthink it and all that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. This is not what you would have heard before. Ed Gamble was on it. He'd given me loads of advice in the past about it. Mm-hmm. Gary Delaney was on it. And he, on the day, came to my dressing room and was like, here's just like some quirks with this show that you might not have experienced. So like, don't worry. Basically, they just, for the most part, it's just like, don't worry if a joke doesn't work. It will already have moved on.
Right.
So it won't be like the audience thinking, oh dear. It's like so much is going on that, and also everyone will say stuff that doesn't work. You record for like 2.5 hours and it's a 2-hour new material gig, right? Where you've never tried any of these jokes before and they might all be dog shit.
Yeah.
So of course everyone's going to have stuff that flops and it just doesn't matter at all because...
Have on 8 out of 10 Cats, they always have like a celebrity who's not a comedian on there. Have you ever come across any celebrities that aren't traditional comedians who are just like super, super funny? We ask comics this a lot and we're surprised that...
Yeah, who have I come across that I'd be like, wow. I mean, there'd be loads, but again, I just shit memory. But I mean, to watch, I'd be like Louis Spence, obviously, is funny.
Yeah.
And Gemma Collins and like Joey Essex. Jimmy Bullard. I did one of my first panel shows that Jimmy Bullard was on. It was just like, all right, it's the Jimmy Bullard show.
Right.
It's like, well, what's the point? It was like all comics and Jimmy Bullard, basically.
Yeah.
I think it was either like Sweat the Small Stuff, a BBC Three panel show that did a couple of series, or maybe Virtually Famous, which is, there was a period in British panel shows where they tried to make about 8 different panel shows about online clips.
Right.
But it was like, they would be talking about like sneezing panda. And it'd be like, yeah, we know. Everyone see. They'd be like way too behind. Also, they'd record 6 months in advance, and then it would come out.
Charlie bit my finger.
Yeah, it was stuff like that. Like, how crazy is that? And I remember being on it with Jimmy Bullard, and it being like, kind of thank God he's here because like we've all written jokes about these clips, which is hard enough. But fucking, hey, that panda. Jimmy Bullard would just be like, saying it sort of like it is, like, what the fuck's this? What the fuck's going on? And I remember that being like, because it cuts through the artifice of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And it's really fun when you're on with someone like that. Because then also you can play off that as well.
Right.
But I'd say, yeah, Jimmy. But I mean, I did this Olympics podcast with Vernon Kay. And he was really funny and he was just so good with the guests. But I remember there was a bit, I had to sort of be like the quip guy on it.
Right.
And Vernon Kay, and then we'd be chatting to Olympians. And Nicola Adams, the boxer, was on it as well as sort of like the expert. And I just remember I'd just be like, it was like, it's set up like this. And there'd be loads where it'd be thrown to me and I'm not saying anything. And I'd just be like, fucking hell, sorry, I forgot. I was just so lost in how good you are at presenting. Because I wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
But he would just be being amazing. And I was like, oh yeah, presenting is really hard. You don't realise until you see someone's fucking amazing at it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're supposed to be doing that. Every time I presented, I've just been doing this. And then you go, oh, this is crap. It's like when you watch someone who's like an old school, like traditional presenter on like the actual channels, you're just like, fuck, there is a huge difference between what I'm capable of and that. And so that, it wasn't that he was like absolutely hilarious. He was. But that was where I was just like, fuck, when you see someone just be talented. And fucking hell.